This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Dean Jean. Dean Jean. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
Hello, America, and welcome to the #1 radio station in all of Fort Myers Beach. Beach Talk Radio. Here are your hosts, Kim and Ed Ryan.
And a good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode number 27 of Mondays with the Mayor. And before we get to Mayor Allers, I want to let you all know that tonight's show is sponsored in part by the great Jorge Barrera. Probably wrote a story or heard about the story about his $6 million sale from a house on Fort Myers Beach last week. Jorge is the #1 top producer agent in Lee County and #4 individual agent in the entire company out of 1,500 agents. He works for Premier Plus Realty with over $25 million in sales in 2022. He's also pledged to donate 10% of his commission sales to a local charity on Fort Myers Beach until the end of 2025. So thank you to Jorge for being a sponsor of the show. Also want to let everybody know that we just got word from Bill Wachulis from the Pink Shell that he'll be our guest on Saturday. I think that's even news to you, dear. Yeah, after posting the picture of the proposal, we heard from the folks at the Pink Shell, so he's going to be on the show on this Saturday. And speaking of the Pink Shell, is there something that you wanted to say?
It was a great event. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Everybody that was there, I think, enjoyed themselves. I mean, it looked like everyone was having a good time. We sold a lot of our pink shirts, or magenta, as I would refer them. But, you know.
Well, we have 3 small sizes, 3 smalls left, and we sold 2. We had 5. We have 3 left. We sold 2 more today, and we ordered every size. And we're hoping they're in on Friday, so we will have them for the Saturday show. And one other thing I wanted to mention was I told you that Christy Hennessy said that something would be coming to us in the mail. This is what she sent us in the mail. I don't know if you can read it with the light. Anyway, it's a book that says Brilliant Ideas I Had While Pooping. I thought there were going to be ideas in here on these pages, but it's really a blank notebook. So I'll put it to good use, Christy. Thank you so much.
You do spend a lot of time.
I have plenty of time to work on that.
Fuchsia.
Is that what that color is?
Yes, Chris.
All right.
Good. Is accurate.
And I want to thank the mayor and the first lady of Fort Myers, and also John, Councilman King, and his wife for coming and stopping by the event yesterday at the Pink Shell. It was a perfect beach day on Fort Myers Beach. So, Dan,
the pool looks fantastic.
Yeah, they've done a great job. The beach looked great too. So, Dan, thanks so much, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I see Cookie running around there, the mascot.
Yes.
She knows when you're coming on, so she gets ready to see you.
Yeah, she's starting to get used to my voice, I think.
Yeah. So before we get rolling on any of the questions, want to see if you had any updates you wanted to share with the folks that are watching.
Yeah, I got a couple. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm sure the meeting today that we had with the town attorney. Tomorrow there's an LPA meeting at 9:00. There's some very important stuff that people have been very vocal about, and that's what the island's going to look like under the rebuild. So I highly suggest you pay attention and get involved. If you have a voice, they would certainly like to hear it as well as myself, and I'm sure my fellow council members. So make sure you're heard one way or another. That's the only way we know what's going on in your mind. As brought up by John King, I believe at the last meeting, they are proposing 8 new Lee-Tran bus stop shelters by the MPO. Don't know exactly where those are. John did, I think, send them to the clerk who sent them out to us, but I don't have it right directly in front of me. Well, we had another meeting this week with the fire district about the potential land swap. We are going to each get each other's property appraised to see, they're both about the same exact size, pretty close to the exact same cost. So we're looking at that as a possibility for a future town hall site. So not a lot has changed, just that we're still having the talks with them and trying to move forward. So as soon as I know something more, I'll let you know.
Before you move on from that topic, Dan, Just to be more specific, so people that maybe didn't see the meeting know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about swapping the land with that has the town hall on it now with the Tops land, correct?
Correct. Yeah, where we currently are leasing the land or renting, I guess, or borrowing the land from the fire district where the old Tops property or the old Tops grocery store used to sit. Potentially swapping that with where our old town hall was. In
Which
discussions
is
with them.
across the street.
Yeah,
It's
it's pretty-
across
it's very-
I mean,
very-
for
It's a-
people
it's
might
across-
not even know where Old Tops is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right next door. It's where if you've been by the
Mhm.
town hall, it's where our temporary trailers are set up and where we'll be. So we have a lease agreement currently with them through November. So, obviously time is of the essence. I'm sure they want to make the decisions that they have to make with the property and either move forward or do what they need to do. So we're working with them closely. Chief Worth has been excellent in communicating with myself and Andy, bringing back our conversations to his commissioners. So we're looking forward to seeing where this goes, and it's just another possibility of the 2 or 3 other ones that obviously we're exploring for town hall.
And the fire district meets so Wednesday night at 5. And just so folks know, we'll be covering that. So if there's any information, it is an agenda item for the fire district. So we'll keep everybody up to date on it.
We talked about this before, but since you're talking about town hall, those trailers, you're renting those trailers, they can stay there. Do they have to be moved if, God forbid, there's a storm in the area, or what's remind us of that?
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely not permanent. They are on wheels, so they can be moved fairly quickly if the need arises. But for us, there's a cost if you have to move those to another piece of property. If you got to move them to Bay Oaks, or if you've got to move them to our old town hall facility, that comes at a cost. There's infrastructure you got to put in there, plumbing, electric, things like that. It's already been done on this site. So ideally for us, it makes sense to try to stay where we're at while we rebuild. That property is big enough to be able to house our temporary facility there and build something potentially new on that site. So that's what kind of piqued my interest at the beginning, thinking that this could work. So, the fact that the fire district's open to the conversation is a good step forward, and we don't know exactly where it's going to end up yet, but we continue to move forward.
Well, so on the topic of town hall, you might as well give everyone an update on whether there's been any progress with FEMA and getting that building down.
Yeah, it's still in the, I think the acronym is EHP, the Environmental Historic something. It's in that review. We have not heard anything. We were hoping to hear something by the end of last week, dealing with our tidal basin people who are in contacts and have meetings with them every single week. They're also waiting to get the updates. So as soon as I know something definitively, everybody will know. I promise you that.
Okay.
The other things, obviously, anyone that was paying attention to the meeting on Monday knows that the millage rate will be staying at 0.99 at least. It cannot go up from there. The majority of the council voted to keep it where it was. There's an insurance village coming up Tuesday, the 27th at Florida's Southwestern College from 9 to 5. So tomorrow from 9 to 5 at Florida Southwest, similar to the one that was down at Diamond Head Beach Resort. All the information. You can find the information on the town's website or on our Facebook page. It'll be there. Also, I believe Councilor Vice Mayor Adderholt has posted information, if I'm not mistaken, as well. The roadway signs, we know what's going on with the roadway signs. Those have been awarded. A big one is that there is not going to be, I've been asked twice today, but so I thought I'd bring it up. There is not going to be a fireworks display, obviously, on Fort Myers Beach. There's, normally it was done from the pier, and obviously the pier is not there. I did see that I believe Cape Coral is still having their, so I can't remember what it's called, something boom or
Red, white, and
red,
blue.
white, and boom. That's right. So they will be having it, but I don't believe that Sanibel will either. I don't know that for sure, but I doubt that they are. But we definitely are not having a fireworks display this year. And then just a reminder to go to fmb.gov/beach to sign your temporary easements for the beach renourishment project that'll be starting hopefully soon in the fourth quarter of this year. So that's kind of
have you been getting more people signing that, or don't you have the tally numbers yet?
I don't have the tally numbers yet. I know that they were going to, based on our meeting, last week they're going to be sending out more information to another round of trying to contact the beachfront owners. So anybody that's listening, if you know someone that owns a beachfront property that maybe doesn't know about this or wants to participate, they can go to that fmbgov.com/beach to get the easement. All the information is there for it.
Dan, do you think it's a possibility that there could be fireworks on New Year's Eve?
I'd never rule anything out. I mean, finding out where you could do them. Obviously, the pier is not going to be built by New Year's Eve, so I certainly wouldn't rule anything out. Try to take it day by day, week by week, month by month. But we're still struggling with getting people and businesses back open. So as much as that's a big thing for me, and I know everybody else, it's not high on the priority list for me right now, to be honest with you.
So if if somebody was able to raise enough money for a barge to shoot fireworks off somewhere close to the beach, do you think that the beach could handle the influx of people parking wise?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say, what influx any event would bring into the island right now. But obviously having people come in to support the businesses and help with the tax situation is always helpful. So, honestly, Ed, I don't know. I don't know how many people would want to come down. That's all information we would have to try to try to get between now and then. I think the only way it could happen would be on a barge. I know there was talk in the past about doing it from a barge. Obviously, you've got to involve a lot of cleanup involved in that. What happens with all the stuff that falls in the water? I'm not a fireworks expert, so I can't really talk as to what it would take. But if there's a will, there's a way, and if people want to have it, and we can house everybody, and we can make sure we get cleaned up afterwards, I'm certainly not against it.
You brought up parking. So do you know how many parking spots are you down from before the storm?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I know we've got quite a few back.
Yeah,
that's what I was
they're
gonna
almost all
say.
back.
Yeah, they're almost all back. So I mean, I think
and I'm
they'd be
noticing
able to.
on the weekend, people are spreading out. You're starting to see a lot of the beach accesses as you come south on the island that are full of cars every Saturday and Sunday. So people are coming down and using them and enjoying the beach, just spreading out a little bit. So that's nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent you this question from Steve, and it's a long question. So the details are important, but I didn't want to read the whole question if you didn't think there was an answer worth sharing.
I don't have an answer yet. I did forward that email, his question on to Steve Poposky and Andy.
Okay.
I believe I followed back up with you and asked if you could get me the permit number so that they could look into it. If anybody has any questions with permitting, make sure if you're reaching out to me or if you're reaching out to staff, if you have a permit number, it's very important to include that. It's much easier and quicker to find if you have the permit number to be able to search than trying to just go through. And I mean, you could search it through the address as well, but if you have the permit number, it really saves me a lot of time. And I know it saves town staff a lot of time to try to get you the answers you need to your questions.
Okay. I did forward you the permit number. And what I'll do, Steve, is I'll hold on to this. Maybe we can answer it next week. Cause I'd like to not leave them hanging. If there's any possible way to share that information with everybody that's watching.
Yeah. And if Steve wants to email me directly at allersd@fmbgov.com with the permit number. I've already sent it on since you sent it to me. I forwarded it on to Steve later this afternoon. So I have not heard back from them yet, but we'll get him the answer. But if he wants to reach out to me directly, he can do that. And then I could follow up with him directly.
Great. Before we get to the big discussion that I want to jump in with you, do you want to talk about the town attorney vote today? I think it was 4-0 to go with a new firm. And I guess the big question to make the residents feel at ease is at a time like this, right after a storm, how can they feel comfortable that institutional knowledge you all talk about is gone and we're starting fresh and that you're all comfortable with that?
Yeah, that was a big concern, I know, for Councilor Veach, and it was a concern for myself, even though I did vote at the last contract for John and his firm to not renew it for the reasons that I stated. Institutional knowledge is very important, especially when it comes to some of the things that we're dealing with. However, you have to rely on the fact that they're professionals. This is what they do every day. This is what, it's their job to get caught up to speed, just like it would be you or I if we stepped into a new job to get caught up to speed as fast as we can. But at the end of the day, the institutional knowledge doesn't do you any good if you're having communication issues or you're not getting along with staff, or, that knowledge doesn't do you any good if it doesn't get it doesn't get brought to the attention of the people that are making the decisions. So that's a big part of why I decided to move on. As I said in the meeting, John is always professional with me. I've never had any issues with him answering the phone or answering any direct questions. It was a lot of since the storm, a lot of the information, it was a lot of he said, she said, back and forth. And in where we're at now after Hurricane Ian, we need people that can make decisions, can move forward, own it. If you make a mistake, you just got to own it and keep moving on. But you got to have that communication, especially now between staff and our legal firm to be able to get decisions quickly. We can't take the time it was taking to get decisions or to get contracts done or to get ordinances or resolutions done. It was taking way too long, and we needed to make a change.
Okay, so there was a question earlier on from somebody in the audience that I think is worth clarifying, because I know there is some kind of contracting help that the town has for permitting. Can you explain where that contracting help starts? Is it a certain kind of permit, or is it okay? The town staff does this, and then the contractor does that. How does that work with what you're doing?
Well, we have an outside firm from the other coast that does some of our review process. Exactly what they review, I don't want to misquote and say something that I probably would regret, but a lot of the stuff that what it refers, I believe flood goes to outside review. Everything else for the most part is done in-house. Our inspectors are third-party inspectors. They're not town employees. Those are the things that through our meetings, we have given direction that we want to try to get brought back in-house so that we can be a one-stop shop and have answers answered quickly as possible, and not have to, when you're dealing with a third-party firm that doesn't work directly for the town, obviously they work for other places and you may not always be their highest priority, but to us, we are the highest priority. So we need a little faster communication, I believe, with some of our outside reviewers, and I know that Steve and Andy are working on that.
How long do you think you're going to continue with outside reviewers?
Well, these are to find someone qualified or find people qualified to do this. From what I've been told, this is not my business. It's not the world that I live in, but to find people qualified to be able to do that, much like a building official that knows all the Florida building codes, it's not something that just falls off the trees. It's something that is, they're, especially after a storm like this, we're probably not the only ones that are out there looking for people to come in and do it. As a matter of fact, I know we're not. So it's trying to find one, the person qualified, and two, someone that's going to be a good fit. So in the meantime, we keep trying to move forward. As of, I got the numbers today, 9,216 permits have been issued since October 1st. So they are still churning out the permits. They are still trying to do the best they can to get information to people that have problems with their permit or don't understand what the problem is with their permit. So they're doing the best they can with what they have, and hopefully they'll be able to find some help soon that will be able to come in and be part of the team. I guess it's probably not the most ideal job for people, knowing that they're going to be coming in and having to work very, very hard, but the ones that do accept that challenge, we're looking forward to having them here because they're the people that we want.
And folks, this show is really for you to ask questions too. You can type them in the chat box and we'll pop them up there as quickly as we can. Dan, one of the things that I heard last Friday from somebody I was talking to that I had never heard before was something called a site-specific comprehensive plan amendment.
Site-specific comprehensive. Okay.
And is
that's
that
a term?
Okay, well, that from what I understand is one of the things that's going to come up when some of these new developments are brought forward, that something like that can be done, a site-specific amendment to the comprehensive plan. Is that true?
Well, I certainly don't want to say yes or no because I don't know for sure if that is possible. I've never heard that. I believe someone asked that question to John in the meeting or something along those lines, if memory serves me, and it didn't sound like his answer was yes. But again, I've never heard that term. Obviously, I've if it's out there, I'm sure we'll be able to get it shaken out through staff and through legal representation if it is something. But I have never heard of making specific rules for one specific piece of property within a zoning district, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Maybe that's a question for the new attorney.
I'm sure this is one of the questions that'll probably be asked tomorrow at the LPA meeting, would be my guess. That's going to be a interesting conversation at their last agenda item.
Yeah. And so obviously tomorrow's meeting is going to be a big deal. One of the things that happened, if I'm rewinding on Saturday a little bit, because I want to ask you some of the things that came up on Saturday. One of the builders told us was that 5 stories is the bottom line for the developers. 5 stories is where things need to be. I don't know if I got into the conversation with them about whether that bottom story counts or not, but do you agree that 5 stories is where it needs to be for folks to get a return on their investment? And would that fly?
I mean, I guess I would have to say no. If you just look at what's been built out there, look at Margaritaville. That's not 5 stories, and yet they feel that they can make the numbers work. So I don't know where 5 stories comes from. Maybe I don't know if you're talking residential or commercial, but every lot is different. Every use for that lot is different, and I think that's kind of the dilemma that we're in. Is not every situation is exactly the same, and not one specific rule or one specific change is going to fit every single box that needs to be checked. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And if depending on your business, if you can't make it work with 5 stories, if there's not a willingness between the LPA and the council and our residents to make that change, then that piece of property isn't for you.
So is that, I just want to clarify.
Go right ahead.
Go right ahead. So the stories that you're less than 5 stories, is that across the island, regardless of the location?
What do you mean? I don't understand your question.
Like that's as high as folks not can go, but he was saying, somebody said 5 and you're saying, well, Margaritaville made it go with less. So is less than 5?
Our current codes and the regulations do not allow for 5 stories above flood.
Anywhere
on the island.
Okay.
And when you say it that, okay, 5 stories above flood. And right now that includes counting the bottom level no matter what, right? That's included in whatever the bottom level is, that's included. Because there is some not confusion, but there's some discussion now about whether that bottom level should be included, because if you have to build higher, it's got to be parking or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to try to get into the weeds too much, but essentially the conversations that are being had are FAR, which will be discussed tomorrow. That's your intensity of the building. How big is the box? Do you care how big the box is? Then you get into the heights. Even if you say that the FAR works for you under the current comp plan, some people are saying the height doesn't work. We can make the floor area ratio work, but we can't make the height work because of the limitations to the land development code. So I think those are just a brief, quick synopsis of some of the discussions that have been had on some of these properties. And some of these properties are small, that their footprint, that there may not be anything that they can do on them, no matter what kind of rules you change. But my biggest fear, as I've said, going forward with this, is infrastructure. We've already got a very strained infrastructure after the storm that was pretty well tested even before the storm. How is that how do we mitigate that with some of these developments that are being proposed? Is there a willingness to change the comp plan from where it's at? We've already had some initial discussions about that between the LPA and the council. And we all know where those went. Are there some things that are going to need to be tweaked? Sure, we've tweaked a few things along the way, but does that mean that we have to overhaul everything that is the comp plan and land development code? Those decisions haven't been made, but I think before we discuss anything else, that's the discussion that has to happen. Is there a willingness between the community, the LPA, and the council to change the comp plan and the land development code to fit some of these things that are being proposed? If the answer is no, then we can start looking down the line at other things to try to help alleviate some of these situations. If the answer is yes, what does that look like? What is acceptable to people? What is not acceptable to people? That's what we have to have, because right now, what we have in place, either it works for you or it doesn't. And there's nothing that allows you to go past what is allowed through the comp plan and land development code.
So I'm going to play a short.
Watch it. Let me rephrase that, because that may be taken the wrong way.
Okay.
You can't go past with the comp plans. You can ask for variances, and you can ask for, side setbacks, things like that. But in general, the land development code and the comp plan are the limits in which you can work, the limits you have to work within.
Right. And the interesting thing about the different municipalities is that in some municipalities, you're not even allowed to ask for a variance. The land development code and the comprehensive plan they have in place, they are what they are. You either live by it or you don't, and you can't ask for a variance, which I thought was interesting when you guys were talking about that last week. And I don't know if it was Andy or the previous town managers that brought it up, and I was like, wow, well, that's pretty strict. And then from somebody I was talking to last week, they said that Collier County does this site specific comprehensive plan amendment on a regular basis. So it really is going to be what you all feel is what the people on the beach want. And what I wanted to play a quick, I think it's like a 30-second clip for you here, just to kind of get your thoughts on it. It's from the LPA meeting earlier last month or this month. Let's see if I can get this to work.
The second is just a question of curiosity. When I was reading the minutes from March 9th, we were all very much in unison about the comp plan and the basic concept form. And I'm just curious, has anybody changed their mind? Is everybody still?
Not me, man. I feel just the same as you did then.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that was the LPA meeting, and the LPA is going to meet again tomorrow, and they're going to talk about the FAR, which is a big thing, or FAR, as Kim likes to say in the business, and they're
we should get the acronym right.
Yeah, and there apparently also was a joint LPA and town council meeting where this specific thing was brought up, and everybody's in agreement that right the LPA and the comprehensive plan and the LDC are what they are.
Well, that was the initial. I think it was about the comp plan. I think we all understand that there needs to be some things that need to be adjusted through the land development code, as staff has told us, and that's why we were starting on trying to rework some of that before the storm. Some of the things just don't line up, and how do you get them to line up? You may be able to do something with the FAR, but because of the other restrictions, whether it be height, whether it be units per acre, whatever that is holding up the project. So that's been the concern. The major concern is that it's the other hurdles, not necessarily the intensity of the building. It's the other hurdles that hold you back. And I think those are the discussions that we really need to have. Are people okay with seeing potentially one extra story? Are people okay with calculating from base flood elevation for the FAR versus the entire building, including the first floor? So those are the conversations that have to be had. They're starting to be had. Everybody understands the importance of making these decisions so that there's direction for people who are looking to invest or are looking to rebuild or are looking to relocate. I mean, they just want to know the answers. And I think we owe it to them to give them very clear direction as this is what is going to be acceptable and this is what is not.
So if the FAR were changed higher, then would that change this, I don't know, would that change then that less than 5 stories height, or would that still have to be another amendment change of something?
Oh yeah, you would have to, if you were going to change the way it was calculated, you would probably most likely have to change the height restrictions, because if you're, in my opinion, if you're not calculating the floor area ratio, the first floor in your calculations, you're inherently giving more intensity to that building just because you're not calculating it. It's almost as if that space doesn't exist, which would allow you then to build, higher. But the restrictions within the height are what some people are saying can't work. I've challenged some people in the downtown district that to tell me why is it the way it's currently written? You can't make it work. Why is it the 2 stories above flood that you could have now not work when what you had before was 1 story on ground level? You're essentially getting double or triple the real estate space that you had before. Well, why can't that work? And so far the only response I've gotten is the numbers don't work. Well, what does that mean? The numbers don't work. The numbers don't work because they don't line up with what you had before as far as numbers, or obviously we know construction costs are more. I completely understand that, but what is it about the numbers that don't work? Is it we all have to live within a budget. We all have to figure out, how to spend money and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense in order to make a decision. So I'm just trying to understand what it is about some of these developments, or even commercial or residential, that are allowed to do now, which is more than what they had before, but yet it's still not enough. And I'm just trying to figure out why that is.
You know, when you do drive down Estero Boulevard, I mean, the devastation is still absurd. I mean, it's just no matter which side of the road you look on, the buildings are gone, or they're still sitting there, like the Shamrock or Town Hall. And you know, are people being realistic when they say it's not happening fast enough, or is there just too much devastation and too many rules and regulations that have to be followed to make it go any faster?
Well, you know, I've said this before, because of Amazon and Google, we live in an instant gratification world. You know, you're so used to, I need a pair of socks, I go to Amazon, they're here the next morning. You know what I mean? Well, unfortunately, that's not how it works in the real world, especially when it comes to rebuilding after a hurricane like that. Even without the hurricane, just to build a project, as you saw with Bay Oaks, it took us a year to go through the design process and get permits just to even get started. That there's really no way to accelerate that, for the most part, unless you have I mean, the fact that in our case, there's 5 people that have to make the decision, but if you're making a decision for yourself, you can make it, and probably speeds it up. But then you have to deal with getting in queue with a builder that's going to build the facility for you. Then you've got all the stuff that is outside of anyone's control, like we're seeing for the condos on the south end. And that's the product that they need to get the stuff done to be back in their places. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. So are things moving fast enough? Some yes, some no. I mean, some of the stuff is outside our control. Town Hall, for example, like we keep talking about, it's outside our control to even get started on that. We could start on looking at designing something in the background, which we're talking about doing. But as far as the building coming down, there's nothing we can do about it. So some things are just outside of our control. And yeah, it's not fast enough, but we have to be careful. We have to be careful in the decisions that we make, that we're not making a decision that could have serious ramifications on the other end, just to try to solve a quick solution or a quick problem that we're dealing with now. So patience is very difficult. I struggle with it. I'm usually a very patient person, and I struggle with it too, especially after what we went through. So I completely understand, and I feel for people, and I feel for businesses, and I feel for homeowners that are dealing with it. But we're doing the best that we can, really, and we're trying to improve every day. And we'll get there. And unfortunately, some people are not going to be happy with some of the decisions that get made, and it's unfortunate, but that's a reality that we live in.
And this Let's Go FMB group has been talking about pink zones, and I guess they're going to meet in July to talk more about pink zones. Does the pink zone designation on Estero Boulevard or the downtown district, does that move things along faster if you were to do that?
As I said in the meeting on Thursday, I haven't done enough research to know exactly the pros and cons of I've talked with a couple of staff members about it and gotten their input as to what they feel about it. You know, I talked with some LPA members about it. You know, our issue is about land, and I had a very good conversation with one of the LPA members, and are we discussing small mom and pop businesses when we're talking about this stuff, or are we talking about the restrictions that are on the land? And I thought that was a very good point, because that's essentially what we're talking about, is the restrictions that are within the land, not necessarily the willingness or the want to have the mom and pops back. It's a matter of what the restrictions are on that land. And I don't know, as we continue to talk about it with that group and internally and do our own research, and until I know specifically what that means, I can't say whether or not it would speed up the process or it would do anything at all. I just honestly don't know yet.
One of the other things that came up on the show on Saturday was CPDs and making them more scalable. And the question came up about the traffic study. And could that be something, since the town is requiring it, that they could not require it to kind of help some of these businesses in that process? What can you add? Is the CPD something that could be scalable in terms of fees and stuff down for some of these smaller businesses?
Well, I asked that question to John specifically about CPDs, because I don't know how exactly that works as far as being able to change. Can you make each CPD specific? I mean, I guess by definition, the CPD is specific request of what that developer, that person wants, specific to their piece of property within the land development code and the comp plan. So I guess you could ask for whatever you want, and then it's up to the LPA and the council as to whether or not you get that. Obviously, there's ways we're seeing that people can go and amend them as well. So I don't think that there's a set in stone. Now, as far as the fees go, I mean, a fee is a fee. You know, the more I'm learning about CPDs, the more I understand that they're more designed for people amassing properties, not necessarily a specific property that has, you know, variance or deviations that they can go through to get what they need. So there's a different route that people can go to get that. But as far as the fees go, I mean, we can't waive fees forever. We have to have the fees there. We waived the fees once already, and it cost us over $1 million. So we can't continue to do that. We have to now. Can we change how you go through the CPD process? Sure, that's always open for discussion, but it's got to be something that I don't want to get into the habit of specifically changing something to benefit 1 or 2 or 3 people. It has to be something that's going to benefit the majority of the people within that same confined space, if you will. It's got to benefit more than just 1 or 2 people.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be fair for the entire island, everybody who's redeveloping on the island, which is basically everybody right now. I mean, it's the entire island. And I guess I was confused, of course, whether or not a CPD, who puts the rules in place for a CPD? Is it the town, or is it the state, or is it a combination of two? Or can you come up with a whole new set of rules for a CPD just at the town level?
Again, I don't know. That's something we'll have to ask the attorneys and find out what that process is, how we could get it, you know. And I go back to, we have to be careful that a quick decision, you can't make quick decisions and not think about what the repercussions could be. And right now, I don't know what those repercussions could be from pink zones or changing CPDs to allow smaller properties to have more flexibility and what they can do and get more than maybe the person next to them. I don't know how that correlates just yet. That's the information I think we need to discuss, and we need to get from staff and from our attorneys to be able to make the right decision or the best decision that we can. Because right now, I don't know. Personally, I don't know that answer.
We saw over the weekend that there was for sale sign up in Times Square for a piece of the property on the beach side. I guess Brad has put those 2 pieces of property that he owns for $7 million and $9 million. I mean, when you try and calculate or, you know, think about if something like that were to sell, how would you be able to make those numbers work if you were to build something? Because you already know you got to build up whatever 16, 18 feet. Are you going to partner and come up with an elevator on each side? Or are you going to all have elevators? I mean, the Times Square thing is such a
well, just talk about that specifically, you know, going back to what you said about the five stories. Is there anybody that's listening or would be okay with 5 stories above flood in Times Square? I haven't talked to anybody that, other than property owners in Times Square, that feel that would be a good idea, but maybe there's somebody out there that thinks that. So if you change that, again, we're just using 5 stories because that's what you mentioned earlier. If someone said 5 stories in this part of the downtown district, but now I'm in Times Square and I can't have 5 stories, but they've got it, what kind of problem does that create? One, legally, can we do it? And if we can do it, how do you do it? Does it make sense to do it? So these are the questions, again, I keep going back, that we have to ask. What is the willingness of people on the island to see? I've seen a lot of people saying, you know, or at least in my communication with people, that you know, they understand that the buildings have to go up, and they can understand maybe an extra story, you know, 3 stories above flood or something, you know, which creates that 4-story building similar to what I think Margarita is 4 stories. So, you know, people seem to have come accustomed to that and understand that under the new building codes and the FEMA flood maps and things like that, that is something that, you know, is possible or within the realm of discussion. But I can honestly tell you, I haven't talked to anyone that is in favor of 8 stories or 6 stories or 5 stories. But again, that's why we're going to have discussions about it, and people can come forth and say yes or no, they like it or they don't like it. But that I'm just being honest with you, that's communications I've had with people.
Right. So did you have a question? The discussion kind of starts tomorrow with the LPA talking about the floor area ratio. If you were to have to vote tomorrow, Dan, on whether or not you wanted that bottom floor to be counted, how would you vote?
Well, I've been pretty vocal about it. I'm not in favor of excluding the first floor in the calculations for the FAR. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to it. It doesn't mean that, I mean, I just haven't had anybody give me a good reason other than the numbers don't work because we need more room. So I think a lot of what I'm hearing in meeting with some of these developers and meeting with some of the people that are representing the developers is it's not so much the calculation and how it's done, it's the other restrictions. It's the height, it's the amount of units you can have within that. And that's why you've heard me say it several times. At the end of the day, do we care about the box itself, the size of the box, or do we care about what's inside it, which is the density, the units per acre? Or do we care, obviously height is an issue. I think we've all heard that when people roll out things that they see are tall. People are not a fan of that. So what is it that we care about? I was in speaking with one of our town staff the other day, specifically about Margaritaville. And he said, as he was coming over the bridge, he had noticed that how much different it would look if you noticed, Margaritaville is pushed out to its property lines. I mean, it's pushed out. It's taken that height and it's just spread it out. And what it would look like if there was maybe they were closer, but they were taller to allow a little bit different view corridors. So, and I thought that was a very interesting observation. And I guess I never really paid attention to it, but that's essentially what I'm talking about. If you've got a piece of property we'll just use 50 by 50, would you rather see something that's that full 50-foot wide, but 3 stories tall, or would you rather see something that's maybe 25 or 30 feet wide, but it's got an extra story? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
So that you can see around it or see under it, So I think that's the discussion. And I think when people can kind of visualize that, when you see something, and I think in the packet tomorrow, Sarah has put a couple of different scenarios in there of what it kind of looks like to kind of give you an idea of what that could look like. If you have an extra story or an extra 2, but you're coming in on the sides, you're not having that massing of a piece of property that fully fills up that entire property. Right. Is that something that's amenable to people? Is that something that they would rather see as opposed to, a couple extra stories? That's what we need to find out.
Yeah, she did a great job with those illustrations that are at the end of the agenda packet for tomorrow. So if you have a chance to check those out, folks, it'll really help you along when they come up to that discussion tomorrow at the meeting. One of the things that we heard on Saturday when we were talking to Scott and talking to folks about, the speed of the rebuild is that, there's nothing for people to do after a certain amount of time. They need to get the mom and pop places open. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But that their worry too is that if it goes on too long and the rules aren't changed, that it's just going to be like this for, years. And, do you believe that that's a possibility? I mean, I don't remember.
I said the other day, I challenge anyone that can honestly sit there and tell me that they thought after 8 months we would have our grocery store back open. After seeing what we saw the minute after that storm, if anybody would tell me that they would have expected to have any store open just 8 months after that devastation, I would have to say that they were probably not telling the truth, because I certainly didn't expect it. I didn't expect to see anything for a much, much longer time. But we do have a Publix open. We do have some restaurants open. We are starting to see some Airbnbs come back online. Diamond Head's back open. Pink Shell's opening up. Lighthouse is open. Margaritaville will be opening towards the end of the year. So we've got things coming back. CVS has said that they're going to try to be back by the end of the year. And when you think about that, you think about the amount of devastation and the amount of just the debris that was hauled away. From then to where we are now, I understand why people feel that we're not moving fast enough, or some could say that we're not moving fast enough, but you have to also look at the reality of what we were dealing with, what we're continuing to deal with. And we're not even done with the debris yet. So we're still in the debris removal phase. Yet we've got a Publix open, we've got restaurants and bars open, we've got retailers open, we've got Airbnbs that are being rented. This is 8 months after a storm, 9 months after a storm. It's that in itself is pretty impressive. I would say that we're further along than I anticipated, at least. And 7-Elevens are coming back. They've committed their rebuilding. I haven't checked, but I believe they said they were going to put in on the 16th for to get the permit moving for the one on the south end by Santini Plaza. Santini Plaza has got the windows and the roofs in. I was just down there. I saw you did a walkthrough. There's several businesses that are coming back there. So, within a year, we're going to have several businesses back. Hopefully we'll have many of our condo owners back in their condos by the start of next season. So I think we're going to get there. It's, you know, new building is going to take a little bit longer than we want, but that's just the nature of the beast that we're in right now.
Yeah, and good news for the people on the south end, because it sounds like the liquor store will be the first one open in Santini Valley. Just kidding.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I'd be willing to bet there's some people out there that are trying to get that open as soon as, sooner than later.
So, go ahead.
No,
Yeah, there was
I'm trying to read the comments.
I know.
But it's like, woo.
We always appreciate when Albert from Studio AD gets on there, because he knows his stuff for sure. So
He does.
so
I try to follow along with the comments as we're talking.
I know
Yeah,
it's tough.
it's difficult sometimes. They pop up. They're pretty, in case there's questions that maybe I missed or something. But
So Dan, when the LPA tomorrow talks about the FAR, and you know they make a recommendation to the town council, when does that move to the council? You're off in July, and then you meet in August.
Most likely in August. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, September is pretty much budget talks. That month.
Okay.
Month is pretty much because they have to be night meetings. So those two meetings in September are pretty much the first reading of the budget, and then the second reading. There are maybe a couple other things that are in there, but for the most part, probably August would be the, you know, and if for some reason something comes up, we have to have a meeting in July, we will. Just depends on, you know, how important it is, and do we need to make a decision sooner than later. So we're certainly not opposed to having to have a meeting if we have to have a meeting. It's not out of the question.
So you'll discuss, I guess, the FAR, right? I mean, that seems to be something that
In August.
LPA will move along. Do you make a decision? Okay, we are or we're not going to include that. We're going to make the change or not make the change, and then you're done with it. Then people build according to what the rules are.
We'll see what their discussion comes out of. I mean, if there's recommendations tomorrow to make changes, obviously I'll be paying attention. I'm sure all the other council members will be as well, to see what that discussion is about. And if there's a decision that has to be made, they'll bring it to the council to have a decision made. If there's no decision to be made, then it ends there tomorrow.
One of the things we asked Kevin Ruane when he was on the county commissioner, when he was on the show, was we kind of pushed him on when he thought the pier would be rebuilt, and that he said 2 or 3 years. There's just too many organizations involved, and you got the Army Corps of Engineers, and you got all this other FEMA crap, and then you got all these other projects the county's working on. How long, in your opinion, before we really start to see building in the business district of Fort Myers Beach, like serious building, not 1 or 2 here and there? Like it's all you hear is
Like
saws
new
and shit
construction?
going on. Yeah.
Okay.
What's your
Oh,
opinion?
you mean like pilings going in the ground? Or stuff
Yeah,
like
whatever
that?
the building's.
You know,
Whatever
right now,
those terms are.
Right now,
Terms are.
I don't know that there's any application in to do anything.
And
so-
I'm not asking you to be official. I'm not asking you to be official. I'm asking
I'm
you
not
to
trying to
fill
be
your
official. I'm
opinion.
just telling you, I can't, it's hard for me to tell you. We'll put in a house as a situation, commercial building, same thing. We don't know what anybody's planning. We don't know how far down the road someone's planning. Do they already have plans that they are willing to submit that they know fit within the guidelines that are currently in place? That's obviously going to go much quicker. How far along the design process are they? I don't know. If I would say if someone was not in the design phase yet, it's going to be a year at minimum before you're going to see a piling go in the ground. Now, if someone's further along and we just don't know yet, we haven't seen the application, that it could be sooner.
Yeah. Well, even if you're following along on the Moss Marina project, when you read the time frames they put together, it's like a 3-year project. I mean, these things.
Yeah,
they don't
that's a
happen
massive.
overnight.
That's I mean, from no matter when they start till the time they open, I believe that they said it would be 3 years. So
Yeah.
if they were to start tomorrow, it's 3 years before they're going to open the doors. So, you know, as much as we talk about the big projects and the big property, we also have to focus on the smaller ones. You know, I've always said this, that one big project or one big whatever it is outside of just this specific thing, if you can do, you know, I'll just use an example in the lighting business that I was in. I would have much rather done 5 smaller valued projects to get a bigger return on my investment than one large home run house. Does that make sense? So in the lighting world, if I could do 5 $25,000 projects, I would make more money than one $100,000 project, one big, you know, or one $200,000 project. It would make more money because it could do them faster and get them done and be more efficient. So we got to keep as as a town, we got to keep that in mind. We can't just singularly focus on big projects. We got to look at this, as I think Scott was talking about on Saturday. We have to look at the small stuff too, and what can we realistically get moving quicker. We need to get things back. We need to get, CVS is open. We need to get the 7-Elevens open. We need to get, places for people to come and stay, or they're not going to come if we got no place to stay. So they're all things that we have to do, but we have to, you take one bite of the apple one day at a time. It's all.
Right. When we
Well, and the other thing that he was mentioning is that, when this was on Saturday, Scott, that when people come because he's got a vacation rental business, I think that's just what he was referencing, is that when people come, then at 7:00 or whatever, there's nothing else for people
can't
to
get
do.
a Band-Aid.
You can't get stuff going. So to your point about getting some of those things in place, other services, other stores, other things to
The 7-Eleven
provide.
really would solve a lot of those issues that he's talking about. Not all of them, but it would be nice to not have to go to Walmart to get a Band-Aid after 7:00. I mean, but that would be
all the businesses like that, whether it's your Airbnbs, whether it's your bicycle renters, whether it's golf cart rentals, whatever. Everybody's suffered the same. Everybody understands that if there's nothing here, if there's no places for people to stay, then all those businesses have nobody to give their services to. If you don't have a place to have an Airbnb, or you don't have a place to have a hotel, there's no place for someone to stay. No one's going to buy a beer. No one's going to buy food. No one's going to buy a bicycle rental. Nobody's going to do any of that kind of stuff because there's no place for them to stay. So you have to get people back in their houses, and you have to get places open so people have a place to stay when they do come to visit. Because the beach is why people are coming here. And as I said earlier, you can see all up and down Estero Boulevard, the majority of the beach accesses are full of cars every weekend because people still love to come and sit on the beach.
And the beach looks great, and the berm looks great, and the beach does look great. And you guys aren't even halfway done with that renourishment. I can't imagine how great it's going to look after those millions of dollars worth of sand are pumped onto that beach. It's really going to change that. Just like I think that when Margaritaville opens at the end of the year, even though the pool's not going to be open until the first part of next year, that's really going to change a lot down there. I mean, there'll be a sense of some excitement down there because, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's going to be a huge lift for the island for that place to be open.
Well, there's been no shortage of people that want to develop, or people that want to build back, whether it's your private residence, whether it's the outrigger, whatever. There's not a shortage of people that want to build. Honing in on what they're allowed to build and what they can what they can make work. That's kind of the process where we're at. And there's nothing out there right now that's holding anybody back from building back should they want to. May not be exactly what you want, may not be the most return on your investment, but there's really nothing that's hindering someone that really wants to get motivated and get moving to build back. And again, it might not be, and I'm not saying that everything can build back exactly the way it was. I'm saying that there's an avenue for you to do it, and if you need more, you can get it. But we have to, I hate to keep saying it, but we have to have these discussions. We have to find out what is the threshold that people want to change or not change at all. That's what we have to decide.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how many people show up to the meetings, how many people really participate in the LPA meeting tomorrow and come to the council meetings when this is on the agenda. I mean, I'm not saying that our page is, is the voice of, well, I do say that, but that's just a slogan. I'm not saying that you should take what our page is for, but when we post a picture of something that is fairly big, the response is quick and it's visceral, and the people on the beach are afraid of heights. And I mean, at least the people that are watching our goofy little podcast, and I imagine that you guys are going to have to figure out somewhere in between to make everybody happy.
I think it's heights, but it's what you were talking about before. You either build lower and across,
and you block
higher
the view of
and
the
narrow.
beach.
Right.
View corridors.
But
there's a lot of anchorages. There's a lot of things inside there that that have to be unpacked. And I keep going back to it's not talked about a lot because I said this to you, Kim, the other day. It's the size of the pipe, right? The pipe's only so big, and you can only put so much stuff through it. And the more I talk to people, the more I see what things people are proposing to build for the residential homes specifically, as well as commercial. people that had the 1 or 2 bedroom cottages with the 1 bathroom are now going to build 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses with 4 or 5 bathrooms in it. That's a lot of stress on an infrastructure, both water, sewer, everything that, we have to be very mindful of. And these are those ramifications that I talk about. Everybody loves to look at some of these designs, and everybody understands that they have to be within certain limits and everything. Everybody understands that, but we really have to keep a close eye on an already taxed infrastructure system that is going to be even more.
Yeah.
Who keeps an eye on that, and how
do you know?
How do you know? Like, is there mathematical, not to be funny or flippant, but
there's so much shit in that pipe. We need bigger pipes.
Mathematical.
You said it, I didn't.
Yeah. Like,
well, we are a barrier island, and barrier islands were not designed to be lived on. So in order to get infrastructure and get things that you need on the island, that takes money, and it's very expensive, and it has to work. We can all see what happens. We had before the storm, when it would rain heavy, anybody that was here before the road was built, you remember every street flooded. Everywhere you went, the Estero Boulevard was underwater for days if we had very heavy rains, and it just seems like there was never any end to it. Well, that went away after Estero Boulevard was finished. And then you saw after the storm, we're starting to see puddling again because the infrastructure's got sand in it. There's all that sand had to go somewhere. So, Earthview's out doing the cleaning for us, getting that cleaned up. The county's working on their thing. So all of that stuff is, we're in rainy season again. We're in hurricane season again. So we could potentially get a lot of rain. So getting those cleaned out. Now add on top of it all these houses that I'm talking about. And all that, it's something that's very important. I think we really have to keep, we'll have the discussions about heights and what fits inside and density and that, but with density and intensity comes infrastructure stress, and a system that's still damaged and not back to where it was before the storm. We have to be very mindful of that.
Yeah,
so who does keep an eye? Like, who is responsible for that? Making sure that if it say like everything can go up, you can do all of this, but who's there to say you can't have that much in the pipe? It's just not gonna. There is a limit. There is a stress point that we have to be aware of. And who is it? An architect? I don't know. Is it a planner? Is it an architect? Who does that? Or if anybody?
Well, it's our utilities department as well as the counties. We get our water from the county, and water pressure is a thing. Internet's a thing. Flushing your toilets. It's all a thing. It's all things that are not pretty to talk about, but it's things that you have to be mindful of when you're talking about adding things back or building back.
It won't be pretty if you don't account for it. That's for sure. It will not.
Yeah,
be pretty.
you have to. Is the system that we currently have that's just been installed, is that enough to handle some of the things that we see are coming, the bigger houses and potentially bigger developments? Can we handle it?
Yeah,
that's a question.
I did notice, as you were saying, a couple of the big puddles on the weekend when we were driving around on Estero Boulevard. So it's clear that what was working fine before the storm there's some spots still filled with sand.
All you got to do is go down some of the side streets that they weren't completed before the storm, and you can see, though I can't remember the name of the street now off the top of my head, that right next to the old Charlie's Boathouse. Anyway. Not Curlew, it's the other one. Anyway, that road, I just drove down that yesterday, and it was 2 feet of water. So you can see areas that still have to be completed. Thank God we got a $10 million grant that'll help us, but it's things like that we have to be mindful of. We all want to get back and we all want to build back, but you got to make sure that what's beneath your feet can withhold what you're building back.
Yeah, and the whole
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. To get back to the speed thing for a second, it has been 9 months, and you drive down Estero Boulevard and you see some of the destruction just sitting there. You go down. I went down Dakota Street on Saturday, and I was like, wow, some of these houses haven't even been touched yet. There was like one house on the corner where, it really looks like 9 months later, the owner's not touched the house. So you can go down any street on Fort Myers Beach now, and it's still, there are still houses that need to come down or will eventually come down, and they're probably in the debris cleanup system, and they just haven't gotten to them yet. There's a lot more work on that end of it to be done. I mean, obviously, like everyone else, I would love to see buildings going up on Estero Boulevard and the mom and pops coming back, but it seems like it is going to take a while, man.
Yeah, in speaking with the people that have been through this before, now we're getting into the ugly zone, I guess is what you call it, where the people who have been able to and got out and took care of what they needed to take care of on their property, that's done, and their patients are growing thin on people that haven't done what they should be doing if they can do it. Some people can't do anything. I've talked to some people that it was a house that they inherited. The insurance didn't pay them anything. They've got no money to do anything with it, and that's part of the ugliness that I'm talking about.
Yep.
We're getting into that time now where, how do we manage this? How are we taking it down? And we're working on the steps that we have to do it. But, as I've said before, it's hard for me to bring the hammer down on somebody when our house is still sitting there and you drive by it every single day. And it's just a constant reminder. I don't think that there's a lack of people that want to get rid of some of these houses, because everybody's in the same boat. You look at your life that was destroyed, and you have to continue to look at it. Most people want that gone and start the next chapter of their life. But some people can't afford to do it. Some people just won't do it. Some people are just going to leave it for the next person. So we're going to have to weed through this. It's not going to be a pretty process, but it's something that we have to do. And we've got to make decisions and keep plowing forward.
And it's really not cool when you
let
knock
me
down
just
your
say-
house and you push your debris into your neighbor's yard. That's really not a cool thing to do.
A quick story. I had a guy the other day come up to me and he says, "When are you going to come and pick up the debris? You told me that we could have it out by the 30th. And I said, yeah. And I said, the town went around and we know who had piles out, who didn't have piles out. And he says, well, my neighbor's getting upset with me because my debris is out there. I said, well, what's your address? He goes, well, it's actually on their property. I said, so you took your debris and put it on their property? Yeah. No wonder they're upset. Even without a storm, what makes you think that that's a great idea to take your garbage and put on somebody else's property? So long story short, I informed him that he's more than likely going to have to go get that picked up.
I feel guilty when I missed a garbage guy coming around the corner and I wheel my garbage can over to the neighbor's house across the street. So,
Well, because they haven't gotten there yet.
I don't
It's not like
leave
you
it
do
at
it
all.
afterwards. They go around the
I
circle.
think you needed to
Yeah.
clarify that. People
I could see Ed taking the open recycle bin that's already been emptied, dumping your stuff into theirs, and then just switching the garbage can altogether. You wouldn't do
Still
that,
there with
would
a
you?
mask on.
What were we going to say before you interrupted?
Just going to say to the point about slow, fast, whatever, is again to the magnitude. Like Fort Myers Beach wasn't built in a couple of years. It's been built over many, many years. So now that you have a vast majority, a lot to rebuild, it's just gonna take time. I mean, it just is.
There's again, as I said, it's not for a lack of wanting to get it done. It's every decision has a consequence, and you got to make sure that you're making the best decision that you can to continue to move forward. We look at the beach now, and you drive up and down Estero Boulevard, and you're seeing things that people haven't seen since the 40s or 50s. You're seeing views that you've never seen before. Of course, there's going to be people that want to come in and develop that land and make that view for their people. But I think the town owes it to its constituents and the people that were here long before me and long before them that love this island for what they love it for. We all moved here for whatever reasons it is that we moved here, and we want to protect as much of that as we can. Some of us, like myself, haven't been here as long as like Barbara Hill. Or people like that have been through many iterations of or even Anita Saracita, people that have been here through many iterations of the town and seen what it's seen, but not even they can say they've seen anything like this. And it's very important. Where are we going to go from here? What is the next chapter of Fort Myers Beach going to look like? And the sooner, again, we can get to that decision, the sooner everybody out there knows where we stand. But we have to make a stand. We have to say yes, no, and move on. There has to make a decision. Lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Anita's got to be in one of the most interesting positions because she was around when the rules were written, when the town was incorporated. She lost 2 businesses and her house in the storm, and now she's the chair of the LPA, which is looking at whether or not to change the rules. So if there's one person that's got a perspective on everything from the days when the comp plan and the LDC were written, it's Anita. And to have her there with that institutional knowledge is going to be interesting to watch as this whole thing plays out. Because, you hear people saying, Fort Myers Beach has a clean slate. Well, yeah, you got a clean slate. Do you want to follow the rules that were put in place back in 95 and 96? Or do you want to change the rules because, the storm came through and wiped things out?
Well, the rules that were put in place back then, as we've said many times, they haven't been tested. There's been no storm that has, Charlie was the closest thing, but there's been nothing that has tested the comp plan or the land development code to this extent. And I think we're starting to see some of the things that, there's some discrepancies within there that need to be adjusted. But does that mean you blow up the comp plan completely and then start all over or write a whole new one? Because that's not going to be a fast process. Or do you figure, you try to figure out what is it that you can change that can affect change quicker. But it has to be done smart. It has to be done right. It has to be in the vision that this community wants. Otherwise, what community you at?
Yeah. Okay. We'll let you go after this. But do you believe that the comp plan and the LDC are more of a brick or more of silly putty?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
Should you just, in your opinion, Dan, should you just, it is what it is. You make minor adjustments to it or things like that, or, you just have to remold it because we've gone through this drastic event.
I don't think you have to completely reinvent the wheel. I mean, the wheel works, right? So do there need to be changes? Sure. I think there's got to be some minor changes here or there. There's got to be some things, but I don't know that we necessarily have to completely blow up the comp plan and start all over again. Just because it doesn't make financial sense for one person doesn't mean it won't make financial sense for the other person. But we got to do everything we can do to save the people that want to stay here, the people that invested their lives here, the people that built businesses here, the people that built homes here or have legacy homes here that have been here for a long time. Those are the people that we have to do what we can within reason. You can't make changes that if you make a change to save one thing, but now you have 2 or 3 bad things that come out of it, your net goal isn't what you were trying to achieve. So, we want to save everything. We want to save everybody, but I haven't seen any magic pill that's going to allow us to do that.
All right, Dan, we'll let you go. We ran into a little overtime today. Thank you again for coming on. Thank you for coming to the event yesterday, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
And then just to answer, I saw Councilor King and my hip is just fine.
I was like, oh, no,
I don't want to.
Well,
what happened to your
there?
Uncomfortable situation.
Well, when we were there was John was telling me about his hip and he's gonna have to have surgery and that. And someone came up and asked me, they said, Mr. Mayor, how come you're not out there dancing? I said, I got a bad hip. So I stole his story.
Oh, I got it.
It was a joke and we were laughing. So I saw a comment in there from I think my mother and from
I didn't even get it.
There was quite a few
John.
people out there dancing. Yeah.
Thanks so much, man.
All right,
have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, last night. I mean, yesterday the dancers that were out there, they were awesome.
The couples too. They got out there. They were really.
Oh
cutting a
yeah,
rug.
it was fun to watch them. All right, we before we go, I did want to remind everybody about our special guest on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. Also, want to let you know, in addition to the Insurance Village tomorrow, which is in our newsletter that comes out at 7:00 on Tuesday, you can call Mark Dorston at Dorston Claims if you feel like your insurance company has given it to you and you know what. You can give Mark a call at 239-849-2949, and Mark will help you get more money than your ripoff insurance company has passed along to you. And also Mike Bannock, if you are a house or the structure that needs demolition, Mike is on the job still on Fort Myers Beach. If you are or own. Well, if you are, you wouldn't be able to be a talking building. Debris removal, interior demo, lot leveling, utility cap off. It's all under Mike Bannock's specialty because he is the demo man. You can give him a call at 352-636-3719. Thank you, Lori. Again, that number is 352-636-3719.
And he is both the people you
Yes.
mentioned, good guys.
They've been around helping us sponsor the show since the storm came through town. Once again, I want to make sure we thank Christy Hennessy, who sent this notebook in that says, "Brilliant ideas I had while pooping." I don't know that I'd ever talked about pooping so much that somebody would remember to send us a book, or perhaps I did and I just forgot about it. So thank you, Christy, for that lovely gift. She said we'd get a kick out of it if it came before the show today. And finally, you saw the picture that we posted on Facebook today. Was one of those days where it was like a train wreck on the Facebook. You couldn't stop reading the comments because of the developments that are coming along and how people feel. Right. Well, I was just trying to tease people to read the newsletter tomorrow. So
You don't want them to get all.
I know they got the whole thing wrong. They thought it was Moss Marina. It's not Moss Marina. It's the Pink Shell. And Bill Wachulis from the Pink Shell will be our guest on Saturday, which is 4th of July weekend at 11 o'clock at the Wahoo Willie's. So we hope you'll all come down. We are hoping to have more pink tank tops after selling out of them on Saturday and Sunday. Thank you very much. Anything you want to add?
Fuchsia.
It's called fuchsia. It's not really
Fuchsia.
pink. It's a pink kind of fuchsia. Fuchsia.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for watching. We'll be back Thursday night with a special show that includes condo presidents and the challenges they are going through in opening back up. Thursday night at 5 o'clock. Bye-bye.